Well, thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Sonia, for joining us. In this roundtable, we're going to celebrate International Women's Day. This year, the theme is Choose to Challenge. And I'm sure you had to challenge many situations and many people in order to have such a successful career. Got an expert in data science and technology and an expert in communications. So I think that you are the best to introduce yourself and tell us about your career, how you got here, what are you doing right now. So I'll start with Maria.
Okay, thank you. And I'm really excited to be here. I work for SAP, which is a European company. I've been with them now over 11 years. Prior to that, I worked for IBM and I also worked in the financial services industry. My forte and my professional career has been based on information technology, specifically data and how do you manage data within companies, which is a great marriage, I think, of technology and business as well. What I'm doing now is probably having the best job in the world. So over the last 20 some odd years, I was in a very operational role. I had that role of that chief data officer, sometimes head of data, whatever they call them. So it was a very operational role, reporting to either the COO of the company or the CFO. But 3 years ago, I decided I wanted to get out of that operational role and I stepped into an advisory role. So sort of a consultant. So I'm an advisor now to our most senior customers, and I get to help them with their data programs and data journeys. So I've become more of a teacher and I get to meet some great people as a result of it. And it's really the best job that I've had over the last 4 years.
Oh, that's fantastic. What have you studied?
So I started with an undergrad in computer science from Florida International University. And then I went into IBM and started with IBM. And about 6 or 7 years into my career, I went and got an MBA and an MIS degree that was sponsored by IBM, also from the University of Miami. And then I'm married to someone who's a University of Florida graduate. So I've got all the universities covered and all the Florida universities covered.
That's terrific. And it's particularly a tough industry for women, right? Technology, perhaps not so much now. And let's introduce Sonia. Tell us about yourself. I know you are from Texas, right?
Yes,
And you
I am. So yeah, I am originally from Texas. I am currently the Senior Vice President of Public Relations and Communications at Balsera Communications. Our agency specifically focuses on public affairs, media relations, a lot of community relations, particularly around civic engagement, policy issues. So a lot of my clients will, brands and organizations alike will seek us to particularly engage a community on a particular issue. So I work on referendums, bonds. Sometimes I work on political campaigns, sometimes get out the vote or voter registration. It depends. Sometimes it's health education, right? So I'm doing a lot of that right now around COVID. My path is a little unconventional. I didn't go to college right after high school. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Actually, I wanted to study music. And my dad was like, what are you going to do with that? And I was like, well, I just won't do anything then. And then, eventually by the time I was 25, I was like, I guess I better figure out what I want to do because I want to have a sustainable life. I would take that as the first lesson that you need to do things and you need to follow your heart. I think as women, especially, we often give in to the expectation of what our life is supposed to look like or what is supposed to go next. I think that for me, one of my virtues that I'm most proud of is that I've kind of just always gone by the beat of my own drum. Even if it's taken the long path, even if I've made a lot of mistakes, I did things the way that I wanted to do them. So, but eventually I did go to school. So when I decided to go to school, I was like, okay, well, whatever I'm going to do, it's going to be like Miami. I was like, I'm going to study Spanish. That was something that was very instilled in me as I was younger. And so I was like, I'm going to be a teacher. I'll be a Spanish teacher in Miami. And then half of the way through my college experience, I felt like education is a way of having social impact, but I also wanted like another way of using my voice. And so I started looking into mass communications because I thought maybe I would go into radio, but that would require me to change my major. And I didn't want to do more school. I wanted to move to Miami. So I just did it as a minor. And in that process, I discovered PR and the concept of public relations to educate communities or have some sort of social impact. And that's kind of how I wound up in that space. So I feel super grateful that I was able to start at a large agency in Texas at Edelman get a great foundation. I had a great mentor who today is still one of my best friends to me. She's like my sister from another mister, I call her. And that allowed me the opportunity to be able to, come here, interview, and then I went on to Burson Marsteller, and I was at Burson Marsteller Miami. And that's my second lesson, like I got hired for technology. I could have stayed in Austin and done technology, but I really wanted to live here and I wanted an opportunity. So, opportunities don't always look like what we think they look like. And then, later on, kind of like when that opportunity ran its course is where I found my opportunity with Balsera to do this work. And I really came here because I wanted to work on the Obama campaign, but it's been almost 10 years and I can't get rid of these people.
And you're going to tell us a bit later, you're also at the advisory board of the Hispanic Public Relations Association, right?
I'm actually the president this year.
Oh, okay.
The president of the national organization this year. Yeah.
Okay. Terrific, and congratulations. I think these are accolades to Latinas who have undergone a lot of doing, and we all make mistakes, as you've said. But mostly I was wondering what success, we're talking about mistakes, but what success mean for you, Maria?
I'm going to start by saying it's important to have a supportive family and spouse, no matter what you do. If you don't have that, it makes it very difficult to do the other things that you want to do professionally. So I start off by saying you really need that. And then for me, success is also professional success, but I measure professional success in various ways. So for example, I want to have a job that's intellectually stimulating, that keeps me learning and challenging, and that it's something that I feel making a difference in my role and that I'm being recognized for it, whether that's recognized financially or recognized also through the organization and through my peers. So if you're going to do something day in and day out, you better like the people that you're working with and the things that you're doing, because otherwise you'll be totally miserable. And I've had those miserable jobs too. And lastly, I also learned that I'm not very good at being micromanaged. So I like jobs that have a lot of flexibility, financial stability. I never really thought about that I had to be a millionaire or just be able to financially take care of myself as a woman, independent of my spouse. We came from Cuba when I was 2 years old, right? And so I remember my dad said to me, you have to be independent and you have to have an education, because those are the things that they can't take away from you. So that was, that's really important to me too, to have that financial stability.
Okay, terrific. Now, moving on to the theme of International Women's Day, which is choose to challenge. What were the challenges you chose to overcome? Sonia, what were your challenges?
My dad was, when I said I wanted to study music, you should study computers. Study computers. The funny thing is that I'm actually very technology nimble and driven. I was always an early adopter of things, but I didn't really want to study computers. When I started at Burson and I got into technology practice, I felt like, he was making kind of fun of me from up above. Like, see, I told you so kind of thing. But I never really had a problem speaking my mind. I think Claudia will tell you that. I don't think that I necessarily picked my challenges. I think my challenges have picked me. We had the same kind of structure in our house, except I was not that person. And my dad's name was Modesto. They would call me Modesta because it was just like constant. So I've always kind of been like that. And so my challenges has always been to like bring it down a little bit, but not completely mute myself. And I'm really happy about that, because we're entering an era where we are now telling women that they should stand up for themselves. But when I was coming up in my career, it was kind of like, know your place. I know now better. I'm quite often the only female in the room. And I think that I've gotten extremely lucky because I have two bosses that are so 1,000% supportive of me. And obviously when you're in a room full of men, there's always going to be one that's going to be like, I don't like her. And they'll be the first ones to be like, she's the best thing that's ever going to happen to this project. So it's nice that I have never been asked to mute myself. I think the other challenge, challenging the corporate structure, but I still was raised in a household, especially having older parents, about, hard work ethic and respect and all of those things. And so that was kind of challenging, right? Because I was coming into, these big agencies that are very corporate, but in challenging that where I'm at now, it was interesting because I have a CEO who's an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs are super creative and kind of all over the place, right? While the president of my company is a corporate person, he came up to the ranks ranks of NBA and Yahoo. And so I helped to kind of like, okay, where do we meet in the middle? And I think that that's really important because corporate structure, that type of thing is really important, especially for certain types of institutions like financial institutions, as you may have mentioned, technology institutions for sure. But there has to be a balance because too much structure or an obsession with some sort of bureaucracy really hinders creativity and innovation. Coming up with a new way to like get people's attention and break through the clutter and get your message out is a constant challenge, especially today in the media cycle that we have, which is everything is coronavirus. Everything, for the past year has been politics. So how do you get past all that? And that requires keeping people motivated and making them part of the conversation. So getting this place where I'm at now to that middle point, I think has been my challenge and also with some of my clients. But I think that that's what's made me successful.
You've mentioned Corona. I think it's going to be part of every conversation for the next years ahead. Corona, I think it generated an impact in a way that it's beyond the crisis. It's a cultural transformation. And how do you see your sector impacted by the pandemic?
For the kind of projects that I do, I think it's a great opportunity because the things that we've been fighting for and the things that we've been trying to bring attention to have been greatly highlighted. And that is that our structures are weak, our systems are weak, organizations are bloated, and that's across the board. It's not just government, it's not just corporate, it's not just nonprofit. What is for sure, I believe, is that the pandemic is creating, I call it the great equalizer, creating balance, and it's forcing us as individuals as well as larger systems to look internally and fix what's broken. And if you don't, it's going to persist. Society-wise, I think the number one lesson is we have to start choosing community over individual. So for my work, I think it's been an opportunity because we've been able to highlight some of the things that we've been saying are broken, like, workers' rights, the wage gap or income gap, affordable housing, transportation, our healthcare system. These things are broken. And this pandemic is showing us that we have to find some way. Now, in other parts of the industry that have been really affected have been like events. So, how are people going to do events? That's very important for fundraising and for nonprofit. How do you engage your donors? And, or like these big music events, like the ones that we tend to have here in Miami, having to pivot to virtual. The food industry, there's people that only focus on, lifestyle brands, so how you're talking to them and how those brands are now being forced to look at their own corporate social responsibility and how they're going to be engaging their consumer or their community. Overall, not just for us, I think across the board for everybody, this pandemic is basically, asking for balance and, some sort of introspection and a refresh.
That's terrific. And Maria, how does your industry changed or was impacted by the pandemic?
Well, if I look at the technology industry as a whole, certainly there's been kind of winners and losers, but for the most part, at least for the software side of the house, which is where I am, it's been very eye-opening. And some of the myths that we thought, like work from home, right? There was a lot of myth that you could not work from home and you couldn't be productive working from home. That's gone out the window. And I think it's great for women because a lot of women do want to work from home to have more balance and more flexibility. So it's actually been a very positive. And also companies that are really working on digitization. So digitization of business processes, which like my company has, and those kinds of technologies that you really need, that all companies are going to need in the future. I mean, we've also realized the importance that we have on the face-to-face versus our, the virtual, and our dependencies on supply chains, and all of those things have to be reevaluated. And technology is going to automate and digitize a lot of that, and they'll come to companies that can offer that. And I also think that's an important consideration for women because, Sonia, you said it too, you've got technology, you're call it early adopter, but the reality is technology is going to be everywhere. And all women are going to have to learn to like technology, use technology, and be really good at it for their field. Marketing has a lot of technology and marketing, automation already in there. And so I think becoming technology savvy and even data savvy. I wrote an article for Hispanic Business, which I don't know if you all have read it, but you should, because I said what COVID-19 dashboards have taught us about managing data. Because those dashboards that we all saw, we should all be asking a lot of questions about those numbers, where they come from, what's been done to the numbers, what numbers are missing to tell the whole story. So even something as basic as understanding a dashboard for COVID has a lot of technology implications and a lot of questions that we should be asking ourselves to be more data savvy and tech savvy. And we all know about, privacy and security and all those other things too, which is everywhere. So it's been a boom mostly on the technology side, I would say, especially in companies that are in the software side of the house, and look at Zoom and others, right?
Okay, terrific. So the last question would be, what do you think makes Latinas different, or what do they bring to the table different that help them achieve success as professionals?
I mean, I think if you have the opportunity, being bilingual, for sure. I mean, that's one thing that my dad instilled in me. I was the only one of his children born here. So that was like a really big deal that I learned Spanish. And my asset my whole life, even from my first job at Pizza Hut answering the phone, I got hired because I knew Spanish, and like 80% of their clientele was Hispanic. I don't mind the connotation of being fiery and passionate. And, some people find that they're calling you angry. I mean, maybe you're calling me angry, but, we are fiery. We are passionate. We do speak our voice, and we bring a little bit of flair, but at the same time, we're very maternal. So, it's like we have that push, but we're also very caretaker. So we have a nice balance, and I think that's great. Y en la casa la que mandamos somos nosotras.
I would use the word passion. Most of the Latin women I know have passion, whether it's high octane passion or kind of middle of the road, but we do have a passion for the work, and our work ethics is really fantastic. And I do believe that we definitely provide a different point of view also to most decisions and most discussions that is also valuable to companies, or certainly should be valuable to companies.
I guess it's a great summary to celebrate this International Women's Day. Latinas bring to the table as professionals their language, that they are bilingual, their work ethics, the fact that they're very passionate and they speak up their voice, and at the same time that they are caring, and that really, as Sonia was saying, maternal. And I really like the point of the work ethics, because that sometimes is overseen, but is every single aspect of the Latinas are really...
Latinas rock.
Latinas rock, as you've said. I'm very happy to have enjoyed this conversation with you, with two Latinas that truly rock, celebrating this International Women's Day, whose theme was Choose to Challenge. And you're a great example to many other Latinas. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank
you. It was fun.